how Apple became the world's largest monopoly. In 2010, Amazon released an ad for their Kindle app, which was later used in the U.S. Department of Justice's antitrust lawsuit against Apple. The ad featured a woman reading a book on her iPhone app and then moving to her Android phone, opening the Kindle app and remembering her page number. This feature was not accepted by Apple CEO Steve Jobs, who was not impressed with the idea that users of apps like the Kindle or iPhone could easily choose an Android for their next phone. Apple is one of the most successful companies in the world, with a market capitalization of over $3 trillion and annual profits close to $100 billion. Their profitability is due to the exorbitant prices of their products, many of which sell for over. They also charge a commission on all in-app transactions. Apple's most controversial business practices include the fee they charge on all purchases in the App Store, which applies to in-app purchases and subscriptions. This has resulted in criticism from app developers such as Spotify, which does not allow users to upgrade to premium from within the app. Epic Games sued Apple for violating antitrust laws, accusing them of violating antitrust laws. The court ruled that the fee was not anti-competitive, but required Apple to allow third-party apps to point users to alternate payment methods. Although Apple started allowing apps to point users to alternate payment methods, it still charges a commission on in-app purchases and a commission on subscriptions, which is only a reduction in cost. Apple also forces users to view a scare screen, suggesting that third-party payment methods may not be secure. There is no benefit for third-party developers to use alternate payment methods, as they end up paying roughly the same costs, so developers are still stuck paying the App Store tax. The European Union has passed the Digital Markets Act to combat the App Store tax, which requires companies like Apple to enable alternative marketplaces other than the Apple App Store for developers to distribute their apps. Apple has complied with this law by allowing third-party app stores for iPhones in the EU, but will continue to charge a fee on all downloads and in-app purchases from a third-party app store. They will also charge a fee for payment processing, which is optional, as a third-party app store can choose to use a third-party payment processor. This is essentially a pass-through fee, making the fee lower than that they charge on their own app store. Apple has added a core technology fee of 50 cents per app download, which is charged even on free apps, as most apps follow a freemium model. Users are forced to view a scare screen when using the third-party app store and go through an arcane process to set up the third-party app store on their iPhone. Many have called Apple's new system malicious compliance, as they are attempting to technically comply with the Digital Markets Act, but making use of the third-party app store unfavorable, forcing developers to continue using Apple's own app store and paying the 30% fee. In the US, the App Store tax has largely been resolved in Apple's favor in the Epic Games lawsuit. The DOJ's monopoly case focuses on other alleged anti-competitive behavior. Two main reasons for iPhone profitability are the 30% tax on the App Store, which yields extremely high gross margins, and the very high prices of the hardware itself. The latest iPhone starts at, and the most expensive version of the iPhone Pro Max costs. However, Apple's advantage of the iPhone's computing power could be almost completely negated by cloud gaming. Cloud gaming requires a fast internet connection, while the phone only needs minimal computing power because the game is not being run locally. Apple knew this would be a big problem and implemented arbitrary technical rules for third-party developers, making it impractical to sell cloud-based games on the App Store. Apple's decision to effectively ban cloud-based games negatively impacts Android users by denying them cloud-based games that would otherwise have been developed. Tech analysts have been grappling with the absence of super apps in the US, particularly in China, where the ubiquitous WeChat app offers a superior user experience by offering a range of functionalities within one app. This lack of super apps in the US is attributed to Apple's anti-competitive behavior, which allows users to spend less time using Apple's native apps and features. Apple has implemented restrictions on app developers in the US, such as not allowing mini programs within a super app to offer in-app purchases, making it almost impossible to monetize mini programs. This makes mini programs unviable in the US, and Apple does not enforce these same restrictions in China. One of Apple's most effective anti-competitive strategies is their iMessage feature, which was unveiled instead of using the standard SMS text messaging service that cell phone carriers use. This feature enables iPhone users to communicate with one another through Apple servers. iMessage supports superior features such as the ability to react to messages, higher resolution photos and videos, and by default, when an iPhone user messages another iPhone user, it uses iMessage. When an iPhone user messages a non-iPhone user, it uses SMS. In 2013, Apple senior executives debated whether to make an iMessage app available for Android phones, but they quickly abandoned this idea. The iMessage experience is superior to that of SMS and is a competitive differentiator for the iPhone. However, the iMessage feature is not unique to Apple, as other messaging apps like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger have similar functionality. Apple's color choice for SMS messages is also controversial, as it violates Apple's guidelines for third-party developers. This intentionally degrades the user experience, creating societal pressure to coerce people into buying iPhones. This social stigma is especially effective among adolescents who believe that getting their parents to buy them an iPhone makes them cooler than their classmates who can afford cheaper Android phones. Apple's plan to extract money from insecure teens has been highly effective, with the iPhone's market share being the highest among teenagers. It is estimated that up to of teenage smartphone users in the US have an iPhone. In the early days of Apple, they were beneficiaries of antitrust legislation, which they are now allegedly violating themselves. Microsoft was the most powerful consumer technology company in the S, and Apple was an up-and-coming startup. To maintain its market dominance, Microsoft engaged in many anti-competitive business strategies, some of which directly affected Apple. For example, Apple developed a media player called QuickTime, which worked almost flawlessly on both Apple and Windows computers. However, Microsoft set up Windows to trick users into thinking that QuickTime was unreliable when, in reality, it was being sabotaged by Windows. This can be drawn in parallel to what Apple is doing today with the iPhone. Many iPhone users assume that Android phones are inferior due to the inferiority of SMS compared to iMessage. The root cause of this poor user experience was a deliberate strategy by Apple. Microsoft was required to make many of its APIs available to third-party developers, including Apple. This allowed them to make the iTunes Store cross-compatible with Windows PCs, which had the largest market share in the personal computing market. The success of the iPod eventually led to the iPhone, making Apple the dominant consumer technology company. Apple is using anti-competitive strategies to stifle innovation and prevent the next disruptive technology company from taking their throne. I personally think the Apple UI is the best among all smartphones. I also like the leadership of Tim Cook. Berkshire Warren Buffett Company held billion in Apple shares through the end of. I believe the next move for Apple is try to buy an automotive company such as Rivian or Lucid and join the trillion-dollar robo-taxi and autonomous driving segment. Nouriel Gino Yazdinian.